The massive ship floated in empty space like a sleeping giant. Its metal hull gleamed under the distant stars, covered in strange symbols that no human had ever seen before. Inside the ship, alien creatures moved through narrow hallways with purpose. Their skin was gray and rough like old tree bark. They had 4 arms each and eyes that glowed yellow in the dark. Commander Zethkalar stood on the bridge of his ship, the Starweaver. His yellow eyes stared at the small blue planet. Ahead, Earth looked so tiny from here, like a marble floating in black water. He had traveled across the galaxy to reach this place. His people, the Vorthans, were known as the best fighters in space. They had won every war they ever fought. "Commander," said one of his officers, "the humans are coming." Zethkalar nodded. He had heard about these creatures called humans. They were new to space travel. Their ships were small and weak. They had no real weapons and no knowledge of how to fight in space. His leaders had sent him here to study them and decide if they were dangerous. The human ship appeared on his screen. It was much smaller than his own vessel. Its white hull looked clean and new, like a toy made for children. Zethkalar almost laughed. How could such a small race think they could survive in the dangerous galaxy? "They want to meet on the space station," his officer said. "Fine," Zethkalar replied. "Let them come." The space station was neutral ground, built by the Galactic Coalition for meetings like this. It spun slowly in space, creating artificial gravity for the creatures inside. Zethkalar took a small shuttle from his ship to the station. He brought 10 of his best warriors with him, just in case. When the doors opened, he saw them for the first time. Humans were smaller than he expected. They had soft pink skin and only 2 arms each. Their eyes were different colors, some brown, some blue, some green. They looked weak, like they might break if touched too hard. A human female walked toward him. She wore a dark blue uniform covered in small metal decorations. Her hair was brown and short, and her eyes were serious but kind. "Welcome, Commander Zethkalar," she said. "I am Admiral Katie Brooks of the Earth Defense Force." Behind her stood a man in a different uniform. He was tall and had gray hair. His smile was warm, but his eyes were sharp and watching. "I am Ambassador Ryan Clark," the man said. "We are honored to meet you." Zethkalar studied them both. They showed no fear, even though his warriors were twice their size. This was interesting, but probably just ignorance. They did not yet understand how dangerous the galaxy could be. "I come in peace," Zethkalar said, using the human language his computer had taught him. "My people wish to learn about yours." They moved to a large room with windows that showed the stars outside. The humans had brought food and drink, which was a good sign. In Zethkalar's experience, species that shared food were less likely to be immediately hostile. As they talked, more humans came and went. Some were old, some were young. Some wore uniforms, others wore simple clothes. What struck Zethkalar was how they moved. They did not shuffle or stumble like many weak species. They walked with confidence, their heads up, looking around with curious eyes. "Your people seem very active," Zethkalar said to Admiral Brooks. She smiled. "We like to stay busy. Humans don't do well when we have nothing to do." "And the young ones?" Zethkalar asked. He had noticed several small humans running through the halls. "Children," Ambassador Clark explained. "They learn by playing and exploring. We brought some families to the station for this meeting. We thought it would help you understand our culture better." Zethkalar nodded, though he found this strange. In his society, young ones were kept away from important meetings. They were too unpredictable, too likely to cause problems. As the day went on, Zethkalar watched the humans carefully. They asked many questions about his ship, his weapons, his people's history. Some questions were simple, but others showed deep thinking. They wanted to know about star travel, about other alien races, about the politics of the galaxy. "Why do you want to know these things?" Zethkalar asked Admiral Brooks. "Knowledge keeps us safe," she replied. "The more we understand about the galaxy, the better we can protect our people." It was a good answer, but something about it bothered Zethkalar. In his experience, species that asked about weapons and politics were usually planning something. Near the end of the day, a small human approached him. It was a young male, maybe 12 years old in human terms. He had dark hair and bright brown eyes. He showed no fear as he walked up to the tall alien commander. "Are you really from another star?" the boy asked. Zethkalar looked down at the small creature. "Yes, young one. I am from a star system very far from here." "Cool," the boy said. "My name is Danny Martinez. What's your star like? Is it bigger than our sun? Do you have planets with oceans?" The questions came fast, one after another. Zethkalar found himself answering despite his surprise. The boy listened carefully to each answer, asking follow-up questions that showed he understood complex ideas. "Danny," Admiral Brooks called, "don't bother the commander." "He's not bothering me," Zethkalar said, and realized it was true. The boy's curiosity was refreshing after a day of careful diplomatic talk. "Would you like to see something cool?" Danny asked. "I can show you the game center. We have space battle simulators." Zethkalar looked at Admiral Brooks, who nodded. "It might be educational," she said, as they walked toward the game center. Zethkalar wondered what he would find there. Human children playing at war? It seemed harmless enough. After all, what could children possibly know about real combat? He was about to find out just how wrong he was. Danny led Zethkalar through the winding corridors of the space station. The alien commander followed slowly, his four arms moving in rhythm with his steps. Other human children passed by, some stopping to stare at the tall gray creature with glowing yellow eyes. They whispered to each other but showed no fear. "Here we are," Danny said, stopping at a large door marked with symbols Zethkalar could not read. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, Zethkalar saw a room filled with strange machines. Each machine had a chair surrounded by screens and control panels. Lights flashed in different colors, and he could hear the sounds of explosions and laser fire coming from the devices. "These are our simulators," Danny explained. "We can fly spaceships and fight battles just like in real space." Zethkalar looked around the room. At least 20 human children sat at the machines, their small hands moving quickly over the controls. Their eyes were focused on the screens, watching ships move through space. Some children were very young, maybe 8 or 9 years old. Others looked older, perhaps 15 or 16. "It is just a game?" Zethkalar asked. "The best game ever?" Danny replied. "Come on, I'll show you." They walked to an empty simulator in the corner. Danny climbed into the chair and began pressing buttons. The screens around him lit up, showing the black emptiness of space filled with stars. A small ship appeared on the main screen. "This is my ship," Danny said. "I can make it go anywhere I want." Zethkalar watched as the boy moved his hands over the controls. The ship on the screen turned and moved forward. It looked real, like watching through the window of an actual spaceship. "What kind of battles do you fight?" Zethkalar asked. Danny's eyes lit up. "All kinds. We can fight pirates or alien fleets or even recreate famous battles from history. Want to see something really cool?" Before Zethkalar could answer, Danny was already selecting something from a menu. The screen changed, showing a list of options. Zethkalar could read some of the words thanks to his translation device. "Battle of Volf 359, Danny read aloud. "This is based on a real battle that happened about 50 years ago in the Vega sector." Zethkalar's four arms tensed. He knew about Volf 359. It was a famous battle where a small fleet had held off a much larger enemy force. The tactics used in that battle were still taught in military schools across the galaxy. How did these human children know about it? "How do you know of this battle?" Zethkalar asked carefully. "Oh, the game has lots of historical battles," Danny said. "The programmers put in real battles from all over the galaxy. They say it makes the game more realistic." The simulation began. Danny's ship was part of a small fleet facing a much larger enemy force. The odds were heavily against him. Zethkalar watched as the boy studied the enemy positions, counting ships and checking their types. "Okay," Danny said to himself. "They have more ships, but most of them are heavy cruisers." They'll be slow to turn. If I can get my destroyers around their flank. The chill run through his body. The boy was thinking like a military commander. He was not just playing randomly. He was analyzing the situation and forming a strategy. Danny began giving orders to his fleet. His ships moved in a complex pattern, some going left, others going right. The enemy ships turned to follow, but just as Danny had predicted, they were too slow. Now, Danny shouted, though he was only talking to himself. His smaller ships struck the enemy from behind while their big guns were pointing the wrong way. Explosions filled the screen as enemy ships were destroyed. But Danny was not finished. He quickly regrouped his forces and struck again before the enemy could recover. "Very good," Zethkalar said, though his voice was quiet. "Thanks," Danny replied. But watch this part, this is where it gets really tricky. More enemy ships appeared on the screen. Danny's fleet was now outnumbered 3-1. Any normal commander would retreat, but Danny did something unexpected. He split his remaining ships into 3 groups and sent them in different directions. "What are you doing?" Zethkalar asked. "Making them think I'm running away," Danny said, with a grin. "But really I'm setting up a trap." The enemy ships chased after Danny's 3 groups. But as they spread out to follow, they became separated from each other. Danny waited until the enemy was spread thin, then he brought his 3 groups back together at exactly the right moment. The enemy ships found themselves surrounded. Danny's smaller fleet attacked from all sides at once. The enemy had more ships, but they could not use them effectively because they were scattered. "Victory!" The simulator announced. Danny leaned back in his chair, smiling. That was a good one. "Want to try?" Zethkalar stared at the screen. The boy had just executed a perfect pincer movement followed by a false retreat and encirclement. These were advanced military tactics that took years to master. Yet this child had done it like it was nothing. "How long have you been playing this game?" Zethkalar asked. "About 3 years," Danny replied. "I started when I was 9, but I'm not even the best player here. Lisa is way better than me and she's only 10. As if summoned by her name, a small girl with blonde hair approached them. She was even smaller than Danny, but her eyes held the same sharp intelligence. "Hey, Danny," she said. "Want to do a team battle? Jake and his friends are challenging us." "Sure," Danny said. "Commander Zethkalar, this is Lisa Campbell." "Lisa, this is the alien commander I told you about." Lisa looked up at Zethkalar without fear. "Cool, are you here to study us?" "Something like that," Zethkalar replied. "Want to watch us play?" Lisa asked. "We're going to do the siege of Kepler Station. It's really hard because you have to defend the station while also attacking the enemy fleet." Zethkalar knew about Kepler Station too. It was one of the most complex military scenarios in the galaxy. The siege had lasted for months, and the final battle was still studied by military experts. "I would like to watch," he said. More children gathered around as Lisa and Danny took their positions at connected simulators. They could work together, commanding different parts of the same fleet. Other children took seats at nearby machines, joining their team. "Okay, everyone," Lisa said. "Remember the plan. Danny, you handle the orbital defense platforms. Jake, you take the fighter squadrons. I'll command the main fleet." Zethkalar listened as the children discussed their strategy. They talked about supply lines, fuel consumption, and weapon effectiveness. They debated the best formation for their ships and argued about timing. These were not simple games. These were military exercises. And these children were not just playing. They were learning how to fight wars. The simulation began, and Zethkalar watched in growing amazement as the human children coordinated their attack. They moved like a real military unit, each one knowing their role and working together perfectly. Something was very wrong here. Or perhaps something was very right. And that was what made it so terrifying. The siege of Kepler Station began on the screens around Zethkalar. He watched as the human children took control of their virtual fleets. Lisa sat at the center position, her small hands moving across the controls with practiced ease. Danny was to her right, managing the defense systems. 3 other children joined them, each controlling different parts of the battle. "Enemy fleet approaching from Sector 7, announced Jake, a boy who looked about 14. His voice was calm and steady, like a real military officer giving a report. "I see them," Lisa replied. "Danny, can you rotate the defense platforms to cover that approach?" "Already on it," Danny said. His fingers danced over the controls, and on the screen, large weapons platforms began to turn slowly in space. Zethkalar felt his stomach tighten. The children were recreating the exact same battle he had studied in the Vorthan Military Academy. The siege of Kepler Station was considered one of the most complex defensive actions in galactic history. It had taken the combined minds of 6 alien species to plan the original defense. "They're using the asteroid field for cover," reported a girl named Amy. She was maybe 12 years old with red hair and freckles. "Should we send fighters to flush them out?" "No," Lisa said without hesitation. "That's what they want us to do. If we send fighters into the asteroids, they'll get trapped. Instead, we mine the field." Zethkalar watched as Lisa ordered her ships to place explosive mines throughout the asteroid belt. It was a brilliant strategy, one that the original defenders had taken 3 days to develop. This child had thought of it in seconds. The enemy fleet on the screen began to move through the asteroid field. As they passed the hidden mines, explosions lit up the darkness of space. Enemy ships were damaged and forced to retreat. "Nice work," Danny said. "But they're regrouping. Look, they're bringing up their heavy ships." The enemy was adapting, just like in the real battle. Larger ships appeared on the screen, ships that could survive the mine explosions. But Lisa was already thinking ahead. "Jake, take your fighters and hit their supply ships," she ordered. "Amy, move your destroyers to the far side of the station. When the big ships come in close, we'll hit them from behind." "What about the orbital platforms?" Danny asked. "Keep them focused on the main attack," Lisa replied. "We need the enemy to think we're only defending from one direction." Zethkalar felt a chill run down his spine. The girl was using a classic misdirection tactic. She was making the enemy think her forces were weaker than they really were, drawing them into a trap. The battle continued for over an hour. The children worked together like a real military unit. They shared information, coordinated attacks, and adapted to every move the enemy made. When one strategy failed, they quickly switched to another. "This is impossible," muttered a boy named Peter. His part of the fleet had been destroyed, and he was watching the others continue the fight. "No, it's not," Lisa said firmly. "We just need to think differently. The enemy has more ships, but they're spread out. We can use that against them." She began giving new orders. Her remaining ships grouped together in a tight formation and struck at one small part of the enemy fleet. Instead of trying to fight everyone at once, she was attacking piece by piece. "It's working," Danny shouted. "They can't bring all their ships to bear at once." Zethkalar watched as the children systematically destroyed the enemy fleet. They were using a tactic called defeat in detail, attacking isolated parts of a larger force before they could unite. It was an advanced strategy that required perfect timing and coordination. "Victory!" The simulator announced. The children cheered and high-fived each other, but their celebration was brief. Lisa was already selecting another scenario from the menu. "Want to try the Andromeda pincer?" she asked. Zethkalar S4 hands clenched into fists. The Andromeda pincer was a battle from his own people's history. It was a classified military exercise that only senior Vorthan officers were allowed to study. "How do you know about that battle?" he asked, his voice sharp. Lisa looked up at him with innocent eyes. "It's in the game database. There are hundreds of battles from all over the galaxy. The programmers said they got the information from historical records." "Historical records," Zethkalar repeated slowly. Someone had been selling military secrets to human game makers. Or worse, humans had been studying galactic conflicts on their own. "This one is really hard," Danny said. "You have to attack from 2 directions at once, but if you mess up the timing, both of your fleets get destroyed." "I can do it," Lisa said confidently. "I've been practicing." The new battle began. Zethkalar watched as Lisa split her fleet into 2 groups and sent them around a large planet. The enemy was positioned between them, but they would arrive at different times unless Lisa timed everything perfectly. "Enemy scouts are detecting my first fleet," Lisa announced. "They're turning to face me." "Perfect," Danny said. "That means their backs are to your second fleet." "Not yet," Lisa replied. "I need to wait until they're fully committed to the fight." On the screen, the enemy ships were moving to intercept Lisa's first fleet, but Lisa held her second fleet back, waiting for the perfect moment. "Now!" she shouted. Her second fleet struck the enemy from behind while they were focused on the first fleet. The enemy found themselves caught between two forces, unable to defend effectively against either one, but something went wrong. The enemy had kept a reserve force hidden behind a moon. They struck at Lisa's second fleet just as it was attacking. "No," Lisa said. "I didn't see their reserves." Her second fleet was taking heavy damage. The carefully planned attack was falling apart. In the real battle, this was where the Vorthan forces had suffered their worst defeat in centuries, but Lisa didn't give up. She quickly regrouped her damaged ships and combined them with her first fleet. Instead of retreating, she pressed the attack. "What are you doing?" Jake asked. "You're outnumbered now." "I'm adapting," Lisa replied. "The original plan failed, but that doesn't mean we have to lose." She began using her combined fleet in a new way. Instead of fighting a traditional battle, she turned it into a running fight. Her ships would attack, then retreat, then attack again from a different angle. "She's using hit-and-run tactics," Zethkalar whispered to himself. The strategy worked. The enemy had more ships, but they couldn't catch Lisa's fleet. Every time they tried to engage, she would strike and then disappear. Slowly, she wore them down. "Victory!" The simulator announced again. Lisa leaned back in her chair, exhausted, but smiling. That was close. "I almost lost everything when they sprung that trap." "But you didn't lose," Danny pointed out. "You found a way to win even after your plan failed." Zethkalar stared at the girl. She had just improved upon a battle strategy that his people had been perfecting for generations. She had taken a defeat and turned it into a victory, using tactics that no Vorthan commander had ever thought to try. "How many battles do you know?" he asked Lisa. "Oh, lots," she replied. "I've played through maybe 200 different scenarios. Some are from Earth's history, but most are from other worlds. The game has battles from all over the galaxy, 200 battles." This child had studied more military history than most professional soldiers in the Vorthan Empire. "And you remember all of them?" Zethkalar asked. "Sure," Lisa said. "Well, the important parts anyway. Like what worked and what didn't. I keep notes on all the good strategies." She pulled out a small device and showed it to Zethkalar. The screen was filled with detailed notes about military tactics, ship formations, and battle strategies. It was more comprehensive than some military textbooks. "We all keep notes," Danny added. "That way we can share what we learn with each other." Zethkalar looked around the room. Every child had similar devices, all filled with military knowledge. They were not just playing games. They were building a database of warfare, learning from every battle ever fought across the galaxy. And they were doing it for fun. The next morning, Zethkalar returned to the game center. He had not slept well. His dreams were filled with images of human children commanding vast fleets, their small hands controlling weapons that could destroy entire planets. He needed to understand more about what he had witnessed. When he arrived, he found the children preparing for something special. They had gathered around a large screen at the center of the room. Lisa was talking to a group of older children, her voice excited. "Today is the tournament," Danny explained when he saw Zethkalar. "We have a big competition every month. The winner gets to pick the next scenarios we all practice." "Tournament?" Zethkalar asked. "It's like a championship," said a boy named Kevin. He was about 16, older than most of the other children. "We compete against each other in the hardest battles. Only the best players can win." Zethkalar watched as the children set up their simulators. They were more serious now, not laughing and joking like before. They checked their equipment carefully and reviewed their notes one final time. "The first battle is the defense of Terra. Nova, Lisa announced. Everyone knows the rules. You have 30 minutes to hold the colony against 3 waves of attackers. Points are awarded for ships saved, civilians evacuated, and enemy forces destroyed. Zethkalar felt his breath catch. Terra Nova was not a human colony. It was a mining station in the Rigel system that had been attacked by space pirates 5 years ago. The defense had been a desperate battle, with the colony's small security force fighting against overwhelming odds. How do they know about Terra Nova? He whispered to himself. The tournament began. Zethkalar moved from simulator to simulator, watching the children play. Each one approached the battle differently. Some focused on evacuating civilians, while others tried to destroy as many enemy ships as possible. Kevin took an aggressive approach, sending his fighters directly at the enemy fleet. His strategy was bold but risky. He managed to destroy many enemy ships, but lost most of his own forces in the process. Too aggressive, Lisa commented as she watched his screen. He's not thinking about the long term. Another girl named Sarah tried a defensive strategy. She kept her ships close to the station, using its weapons to help in the fight. She saved more of her own forces, but fewer civilians escaped. Better, Danny said. But she's being too cautious. Sometimes you have to take risks to save people. Then it was Lisa's turn. She climbed into the simulator chair and began the scenario. Zethkalar watched as she studied the enemy formation, counting ships and checking their types. Interesting, she said to herself. They're using a standard pirate formation, heavy ships in front, fast ships on the sides. She began giving orders to her small fleet. But instead of attacking or defending, she did something unexpected. She sent her ships away from the station, toward empty space. What is she doing? Kevin asked. She's abandoning the colony. No, Danny said quietly. She's setting a trap. Lisa's ships moved to what looked like a random position in space. The enemy fleet, seeing the defenders leave, rushed toward the undefended station. But as they approached, Lisa's ships suddenly turned and struck them from behind. She used the colony as bait. Zethkalar realized the enemy ships were caught between Lisa's fleet and the station's weapons. They tried to turn and fight, but Lisa had positioned her ships perfectly. Every time they tried to engage one force, the other would attack their weak spots. Brilliant, whispered Sarah. She turned their own aggression against them. But the battle was not over. A second wave of enemy ships appeared, larger and more dangerous than the first. Lisa's forces were already damaged from the first fight. This is where it gets hard, Danny said. The second wave is twice as big as the first. Lisa studied the new enemy formation. These were not random pirates. They flew in perfect formation like a real military unit. Zethkalar recognized the pattern immediately. It was a Vorthan attack formation. They're flying like Vorthan warships, he said without thinking. Who are the Vorthans? Lisa asked, overhearing him. They are ... my people, Zethkalar admitted. We are considered the best fighters in the galaxy. Cool, Lisa said. Then this should be a real challenge. She began her attack against the second wave. But instead of using human tactics, she started copying the enemy formation. Her ships moved in the same patterns, using the same strategies. She's mimicking them, Kevin observed. She's fighting Vorthans like a Vorthan. Zethkalar watched in amazement as Lisa executed perfect Vorthan battle maneuvers. She used the Talon Strike formation to break through the enemy line. She employed the spiral dance to confuse their targeting systems. She even used the Death Bloom, a desperate tactic that Vorthan commanders only used when facing certain defeat. How does she know these formations? Zethkalar asked. I watch how the enemy moves, Lisa replied, not taking her eyes off the screen. If they use a tactic that works, I learn it and use it myself. The battle continued for 20 minutes. Lisa fought the second wave to a standstill, using their own tactics against them. When the third wave appeared, she was ready. The final wave was the largest yet. 30 enemy ships against Lisa's 8 surviving vessels. In the real battle, this was where the colony had fallen. The defenders had been overwhelmed by sheer numbers, But Lisa did not give up. She looked at the enemy formation and smiled. "I know this pattern," she said. "I've seen it before." She began moving her ships in a complex dance. Each ship went to a different position, spreading out across a wide area. The enemy fleet, seeing the small force scatter, divided to chase them. "She's using the Kepler station defense," Danny realized. "She's making them spread out so they can't support each other." "No," Zethkalar said, his voice filled with horror. "She's using the Vorthan Imperial Guard formation. The formation Lisa was using was not from any human battle. It was a secret Vorthan tactic, known only to the highest-ranking officers in their military. It was called the Ghost Fleet, a way for a small force to defeat a much larger enemy by making them fight multiple small battles instead of one large one. That formation is classified," Zethkalar said. "No one outside my people should know it." "I figured it out from watching other battles," Lisa replied. "If you study enough fights, you start to see patterns. This one works really well when you're outnumbered." She was right. The enemy ships, spread out across the battlefield, could not coordinate their attacks. Lisa's ships struck at them one by one, always attacking with superior numbers at the point of contact. "Victory!" the simulator announced. The room erupted in cheers. Lisa had completed one of the hardest scenarios in the game, using tactics that combined human creativity with alien military doctrine. "That was incredible," Kevin said. "I've never seen anyone beat all 3 waves with so few losses." "How did you learn to fight like that?" Sarah asked. "Practice," Lisa replied. "And lots of studying. I watch every battle I can find, looking for new ideas." Zethkalar stared at the girl. She had just executed a perfect military operation using tactics from across the galaxy. She had not just copied the strategies, she had improved them, combining different approaches into something new and more effective. "How many other children can do this?" he asked. "Most of us," Danny said. "We all study the same battles and share what we learn. Lisa is the best, but we're all getting better." The tournament continued. Zethkalar watched child after child execute complex military strategies. They used tactics from every major species in the galaxy. Some he recognized from his own military training. Others were completely new to him. One boy named Mark used a strategy that looked like it came from the insectoid Jektar Empire. A girl named Rachel employed tactics that reminded him of the aquatic Merlon Federation. They were not just learning human warfare, they were absorbing military knowledge from across the galaxy. "Where do you learn about these different species?" Zethkalar asked. "The game database," Kevin replied. "It has information about lots of different alien races and how they fight. We study them all." "And you remember everything?" "Sure," Mark said. "It's fun to learn new ways to fight. Every species has something different to teach." As the tournament ended, Zethkalar realized the terrible truth. These children were not just playing games. They were creating a new form of warfare, one that combined the best tactics from every species in the galaxy. They were building an army of strategic thinkers, and they were doing it one child at a time. The most terrifying part was that they did not even know they were doing it. To them, it was just fun. Zethkalar could not sleep that night. He paced back and forth in his quarters on the space station, his forearms moving restlessly. The images from the game center filled his mind. Children commanding fleets with the skill of veteran officers. Lisa using secret Vorthan tactics like she had been born to them. Danny analyzing battles that had taken his people years to understand. He needed to speak with the human leaders. This could not wait until the formal meetings resumed. The next morning, he sent a message to Admiral Brooks. He requested an urgent, private meeting. Within an hour, he was sitting across from Admiral Brooks and Ambassador Clark in a small conference room. "Thank you for meeting with me," Zethkalar said. His voice was serious, more serious than it had been during any of their diplomatic talks. "Of course," Admiral Brooks replied. "You seem concerned about something." "I am very concerned," Zethkalar said. "Yesterday, I spent time with your children in their game center. What I saw there troubles me greatly." Ambassador Clark leaned forward. Did the children do something wrong? We can speak to their parents if there was a problem. No, Zethkalar said quickly. The children did nothing wrong. That is exactly the problem. The two humans looked confused. Zethkalar took a deep breath and continued. Your children are playing war games, he said. But these are not simple games. They are detailed military simulations based on real battles from across the galaxy. Yes, Admiral Brooks said slowly. The simulators were designed by former military officers. We thought they would be educational. Educational, Zethkalar repeated. Admiral, do you understand what your children are learning? They're learning about space navigation and tactics, Ambassador Clark said. It helps them understand the dangers they might face when humanity expands into the galaxy. Zethkalar stood up and walked to the window. Outside he could see children playing in the station's recreation area. They look so innocent, so harmless. Admiral Brooks, he said without turning around. How long have your people been studying galactic military history? Studying it? Admiral Brooks sounded surprised. We haven't been. We only learned about other species a few years ago when we first detected alien signals. Then how do your children know about the Battle of Vol 359? How do they know about the siege of Kepler Station? How does that girl Lisa know about classified Vorthan military formations? There was silence behind him. Zethkalar turned to face the two humans. They were looking at each other with worried expressions. What are you saying? Admiral Brooks asked. I am saying that your children have somehow gained access to military secrets from across the galaxy, Zethkalar replied. They know tactics that my own officers study for years to master. And they are learning these things as games. Ambassador Clark pulled out a communication device and spoke into it quickly. Get me the Game Center development team, now. While they waited, Zethkalar continued. Yesterday I watched your children execute perfect military strategies. They used tactics from my people, from the Jektar Empire, from species you claim to have never met. How is this possible? I don't know, Admiral Brooks admitted. But we're going to find out. A few minutes later, 3 humans entered the room. They wore civilian clothes and looked nervous. Admiral Brooks introduced them as the programmers who had created the game simulators. Dr. Peterson, Admiral Brooks said to an older man with gray hair. Commander Zethkalar has some questions about the historical battles in your games. Dr. Peterson nodded. Of course. We're very proud of our historical accuracy. We spent years researching battles from across the galaxy. Where did you get this information? Zethkalar asked. Various sources, Dr. Peterson replied. Intercepted. Communications, salvaged data cores from wrecked ships, information we purchased from traders. We wanted to make the games as realistic as possible. You purchased military secrets from traders? Ambassador Clark asked, his voice sharp. Not secrets, Dr. Peterson said quickly. Historical information. Battle records, tactical analyses. That sort of thing. It's all old information, decades or centuries old. Old information that includes classified Vorthan formations, Zethkalar said quietly. Dr. Peterson looked confused. Classified? But the trader said it was just historical. Data. What trader? Admiral Brooks demanded. A Bolian merchant named Gix. He said he was selling educational materials to help humanity understand galactic history. Zethkalar felt his anger rising. This Bolian sold you military intelligence under the pretense of education. He was probably paid by someone who wanted to see what humans would do with advanced tactical knowledge. But why? Ambassador Clark asked. To test you, Zethkalar replied. To see if humanity was a potential threat or just another weak species that could be ignored. He turned to face the programmers. You created these games thinking you were providing entertainment. Instead, you have been training an entire generation of human children in the art of galactic warfare. That wasn't our intention, Dr. Peterson said. Intentions do not matter, Zethkalar replied. Results matter. And the result is that your children now know more about military strategy than most professional officers in the galaxy. Admiral Brooks was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked, "How serious is this problem?" Zethkalar sat down heavily. "Admiral, yesterday I watched a 10-year-old girl defeat a simulated Vorthan fleet using our own tactics against us. She not only knew our strategies, she improved upon them. Your children are not just learning warfare, they are evolving it." "What do you recommend we do?" Ambassador Clark asked. "That depends," Zethkalar said. "What are humanity's intentions regarding galactic expansion?" "We want to explore, to learn, to find our place among the other species," Admiral Brooks replied. "We don't want conflict." "I believe you," Zethkalar said. "But other species may not. When they learn what your children can do, they will assume the worst." He stood up and walked to the window again. "In my report to the Galactic Coalition, I was going to recommend that humanity be granted protectorate status. Your species would be protected while you learned about galactic civilization." "And now?" Admiral Brooks asked. "Now I must classify humanity as a species of extreme caution," Zethkalar replied. "Your children represent a potential threat to the balance of power in the galaxy. Because they play games well?" Ambassador Clark asked. "Because they play war games better than trained military officers," Zethkalar corrected. "Admiral, do you understand what you have created? Every human child who plays these games is receiving training equivalent to a military academy education. They are learning tactics, strategy, and leadership skills without even realizing it." He turned to face them again. "Your children think they are having fun, but they are actually preparing for wars that have not been fought yet. They are developing strategies that could reshape military thinking across the galaxy." Admiral Brooks was silent for a long time. Finally, she asked, "What will happen to us?" "I do not know," Zethkalar admitted. "Some species will want to destroy humanity before you become too powerful. Others will want to ally with you to gain access to your tactical innovations. Either way, your peaceful expansion into the galaxy has become much more complicated." He gathered his belongings and prepared to leave. "I will submit my report when I return to my ship. I will recommend that the Coalition approach humanity with caution but not hostility. However, I cannot control how other species will react." "Thank you," Admiral Brooks said, "for the warning and for your honesty." Zethkalar paused at the door. "Admiral, your children are remarkable. In my 400 years of military service, I have never seen tactical thinking of such quality from anyone so young. If humanity survives the challenges ahead, you will become a dominant force in the galaxy. And if we don't survive?" Ambassador Clark asked. "Then the galaxy will have lost something precious," Zethkalar replied. "The ability to turn preparation for war into a child's game. That kind of thinking could change everything." As he walked back to his shuttle, Zethkalar thought about the blue planet spinning in space ahead of them. Humanity thought they were just beginning their journey into the galaxy. They did not realize they had already taken their first steps toward becoming either its greatest hope or its greatest threat. The children playing in the game center would determine which path their species would follow, and they would do it while having fun.